Thank you and welcome everyone to today's Aliyah Network lecture. Tonight we'll be discussing shipping and homes in Israel, whether you're buying or renting. Find out what to expect and how to ease the process. We often hear many questions on the topic, and tonight we'll be getting answers from the professionals. Meet Shmuel Mantinband, Vice President of Sales and Marketing of Sonigo Intl Shipping. He has over 15 years experience, and he's going to be offering advice and tips and on what to ship to Israel. We will be taking questions, so if you do have any, please comment on the chat box below, and we will try to get to them towards the end of the hour. Thank you. Shmuel?
Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you're here, Bobby. Now we're good.
There you are.
And we'll be with Bobby on how to use Zoom.
That's an Aliyah tip, right?
Oh, well, there we are. Okay, so I just want to give you some terminology here. This is what we just were. You can see a picture of a container. Obviously, you've seen these on the road. And anybody who's already moved to Israel may have seen what you see on the right, which is a lift van or a wooden crate that's 200 cubic feet. And we'll talk about using that versus using a container. The lift van does fit inside the container. Let me give you just some terminology to be able, again, to be a wiser consumer. 20 foot, 40 foot, you'll hear those terms. That refers to the length of the container. There's also a 40-foot high cube, which is 40 feet long, 1 foot larger, and 1 foot higher, I'm sorry. You'll hear people talking about FCL and LCL. FCL is simply a full container load, and LCL is less than a container load. Lift van, we just saw a picture of before. Overflow, this is something you want to try to avoid. An overflow is when you have ordered a 20-foot or a 40-foot container or even a 40 high cube, and not everything fits in. You want to avoid this if at all possible. It's much more expensive. It can waste the second of your 3 shipments that are exempt for Oleh Hadash, and definitely worth avoiding if you can. Door-to-door is what most people will order in terms of service, talking about picking it up from your home, packing is available, loading in the container, ocean freight, getting to Israel where it's cleared through customs, and then delivery to your door in Israel. Sometimes for small shipments, you want to do a door to port. That will let you save some money, but of course, much more hassle because you have to go to the port and you've got to clear it through customs. THC, this is really important. That stands for terminal handling charges. And you gotta make sure, absolutely sure, that you know what the shipper, what the shipping company is going to charge. It's a known figure, and there's absolutely no reason for anybody to give you a quote that says THC as charged. No, there's nothing like that. We all know what the cost is, and there's no reason that we shouldn't, and I say in my business, we shouldn't be telling you up front what the THC or the terminal handling charges are going to be. Here's just a few pictures of how containers are loaded on the vessel, and you can see a vessel down below with a lot of containers on it. The new ships, by the way, can hold as many as 20,000 containers. It's unbelievable. I mean, to me, it's unbelievable. Let's go through the moving process so you know what to do to make a wise decision. You want to make sure that you get bids for your job based on recommendations. You want to make sure you hire a shipping company who understands and knows the lane to Israel and knows Israeli customs regulations to a certain extent. You can't expect somebody overseas necessarily to know that well, but they'll have a good handle if they work the lane to Israel. You want to make sure you get a pre-move survey. In the old days, we always would go to the client's home, do a walkthrough of the house where we would be shown this is going, this is staying, this is maybe going. Nowadays, of course, we do that much more with video surveys, FaceTime, WhatsApp, Zoom, etc. When you're comparing the contracts or the offers that you get from different companies, make sure you compare apples to apples. And that's very difficult because all of us use different terminology. All of us describe things differently. You want to look at the bottom line and make sure that you are including all the charges even those that are appearing in the not included section, and all of us have a not included section. After you've made a decision, book the mover. Don't wait, especially in the summer and especially the end of the month. Those are the busiest times, and we do 70% of our annual business turnover in the 3 months of the summer. So you can imagine how busy it is then. The next step is for you to start sorting through and getting rid of things and packing in advance of the team arriving, the crew arriving. PBO, that stands for packed by owner. Boxes that are PBO, that are packed by the owner, are not covered by insurance for breakage or damage. So you definitely want to leave breakables, glassware, and furniture for the crew to pack if you want to pre-pack clothing, linen, books, things like that, non-breakables. On the day of packing, make sure that everything is set up and it's clearly, the things you want to have packed are clearly identified. Nothing, well, there's other things worse. It's really lousy when the crew will go ahead and pack up your tefillin or your passport, and I've had it happen where we packed somebody's passport and we had to go back and pull the container and start unloading it until we could find it. And patience is always helpful. This is an example, I will just skip over. This is an example of the, sorry, I'll go back. This is an example of the packing list or the survey report that we'll do, in which we will estimate the volume of your shipment. When the crew is there, they will take as you see on the left here, a page like this, number each box and put in a description of each item, of each numbered item, as well as the condition, usually of furniture, scratch on the right arm, broken leg, I hope not. But I mean, we'll put that kind of information in as well. So moving on back to the moving process, once your container gets to Israel, your shipment gets to Israel, or even beforehand, you should be notified by the delivery agent when the container is expected and what steps you have to take, what forms you have to fill out to allow us as customs brokers to prepare your file for customs for clearing. So it's paperwork and payments, obviously, on the delivery day. The crew will be delivering into your home, placing every box in every room. They will not be unpacking. They will they're not going to plates on the shelves, but they will put the kitchenware in the kitchen, et cetera, throughout the home. And then after delivery, chas v'chalila, if there's insurance claims, if something's broken, that theoretically would be the last step that hopefully you avoid. So what is negotiable? Everything. You can feel comfortable in talking to your salesperson about every part of the quote. You can maybe do part of the packing, do the non-breakable packing. That would reduce the cost. Maybe you want to pack all the boxes and just leave the furniture for the crew. These are the things you can discuss. Insurance is something that we make money on as a mover. And therefore, that is something that you can negotiate to a certain extent. You can negotiate what's included, what's not. And for example, for some of the embassies, we'll also send maids after the delivery to iron the shirts and handymen to hang the curtains. Again, there's all kinds of extra services. That's typically not included, obviously, for Olim. They can iron their own shirts. And again, providing packing material is something that maybe you would provide and could reduce your price. Ins and outs. I'm a big fan of full packing. It certainly takes a lot of pressure off of you, and especially you've got so much going on just before you make Aliyah. That being said, maybe as part of your sorting, you want to do the packing of the non-breakable items. You want to make sure that all charges are stated up front, and there should be no surprises. Again, we know everything that should be happening and every charge that's expected. The contacts, you are entitled to get these phone numbers, and there's no reason that you wouldn't have them from the packing team chief, the export manager, the import manager in Israel, and then the team chief, the crew chief who will be unloading your shipment. You should be able to get in touch with any of these people if you need them. Full accountability, something that you have every right to expect and should be provided by the moving company. And tips, if, again, absolutely no requirement to give a tip, and certainly something the crew would appreciate if you feel they've done a good job. Outs, you don't want any surprises. Hopefully there won't be any, but things do happen from time to time. I can mention there's a tremendous number of inspections, customs inspections in California, and particularly in Los Angeles. Only in Los Angeles. It's really the only port, any place in the world. And that's a surprise, and there's really nothing we can do about it. You certainly want to make sure that the receiving agent takes responsibility for your shipment and make sure that you're informed of what's going on. And then, as I mentioned before, THC, you're entitled to know in advance what they're going to be. Ups and downs, certainly an on-time arrival of the crew for packing, for delivery, professional packing, no breakage. These are obvious things. And finally, the salesperson should be with you and your partner, as it were, in your aliyah. Downs are the opposites. Late arrival of the crew, an unreasonable delay in consolidating or shipping, strikes. That really hasn't been happening very much lately since they arrested and forced the head of what are they called? The warehouse work, the dock workers, about 4 years ago. They arrested him, so he's no longer taking them on strike all the time. And you want to avoid surprises. Tips: walk around on the day of packing with a magic marker. Write on the box in 2 or 3 places to which room it goes. That way, when when your goods are being delivered, you can make sure that they'll go to the right room. And you'll be able to identify the boxes, not just by the number. PBO, if you're packing any boxes yourself, make sure you write on the outside of the box the contents, clothing, books, kitchenware, so that when we prepare or our crew prepares the packing list, they'll know what to put on that box number. Prepare your house in advance, as I mentioned earlier. Separate out everything that stays either with a little yellow sticky or in a separate room, again, to prevent mistakes by the crew. If you're going to have 2 delivery locations, for example, to storage and the other ones to your home, or to a kid or to a parent, you want to make sure that you have that separated so the crew can pack them separately and load them separately. Feel comfortable. You're paying generally, not always, but generally you're paying by volume, how much space your shipment takes up in the container. Feel comfortable to take a measuring tape after the crew is finished and measure the goods on the truck or in the container. You want to make sure that the lift van that we looked at before is filled to the brim or has been cut to size so that you don't have wasted space and are not paying for empty space. Follow up by you should feel comfortable following up with your salesman, and your salesman should be following up with you. And if you can, try to have the first packing of the day. We know when we're going to start the day. We never quite know when we're going to get to the second or the third job of the day. Bulky items. Our crew will dismantle kitchen, dining room tables, and beds. But if you want to save space, maybe you're going to want to dismantle bookcases, because we will not, that's not something that our crew will typically dismantle and will not reassemble in Israel. You can fill drawers with lightweight items, things like pillows, sweaters. You want to make sure there's nothing heavy in the drawers. First of all, the crew can't necessarily lift it, but also keep in mind that for a month, your shipment is going to be on the water and rocking back and forth on every wave. And if you have books in a drawer, those books are going to tap, tap, tap against the side of the drawer, and they will potentially loosen or weaken the integrity of the drawer. Check the prices of new goods in Israel, what's the cost of shipping. I see people shipping things that it hurts me because they can just get the same things in Israel. I have people that send 2 boxes of hangers. Oh my goodness. That's, costing them a fortune, but it's costing money, and they can get a hanger in Israel. As we mentioned, fill in the furniture with lightweight items. The last week of every month is the busiest for us, year round. but certainly in the months of the summer months. And if it's possible to avoid those that last week, do so. And try to avoid the summer. So again, always compare apples to apples, check what's included, and more importantly, what is not included. The contract absolutely must include all possible charges, so there's no surprises. And again, THC, I'm bringing up again, make sure you know what that is going to be charged at. And I even had one time a friend of mine from Chicago moved to Israel, and then when he got to here, they said, oh yeah, for the delivery, it's another $1,000. He said, what? Yeah. He had no choice but to pay. So I wish you much good luck. Remember, patience is always helpful. Time cures all. And always remember, it is important to be here. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions after Steve's presentation.
Thank you much, Shmuel. I hope some of our members were able to benefit from that. I do see a few questions. Maybe before Steve comes in, we'll just answer them quickly. Can you speak about a full container in price versus a lift?
Well, it's obviously going to make a big difference based on the volume of your shipment. Up to about 750, 800 cubic feet. It's worth going with lift fans. Lift fan, as I said, can hold about 200 cubic feet. The small 20-foot container can hold about 1,050 cubic feet. So up to about 750, 800, you're going to ship in a lift fan. Above that, you're definitely going to go in your own container. Sorry?
Someone's not muted.
Yeah, if you please just go on mute, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I see another question here, but you may have answered it in your prior question. What was the cubic size of the lift van?
Okay, so the lift van is 200 cubic feet. The 20-foot container is about 1,000 to 1,050 cubic feet. The 40-foot container is about 2,100 cubic feet. And the 40-foot high cube is 2,400 cubic feet. And when I say approximate, they are approximate because obviously nobody is shipping water or sand, which can fill every nook and cranny. You're shipping personal effects, and they're different sizes, so we have to build a puzzle. So it's not an exact figure.
Okay, it says here, I plan to ship a smaller amount that may fit on one pallet I saw pictured. What is the term for one pallet?
One pallet, a pallet can generally hold about 100 cubic feet. So again, depending on how high it's stacked, but a pallet is about 100 cubic feet.
Any tips for shipping musical instruments?
Well, I would make sure that they're in a hard case. And I don't really know much beyond that. If it's if somebody's shipping a Stradivarius, obviously they're going to take it with them on the plane. But you want to make sure that it's in a hard case, or build a wooden crate for it, which we can certainly do as well.
So would you maybe recommend having that professionally packaged?
Well, definitely professionally packaged. But again, if it's in a hard case, that's a pretty good protector, and it's generally purpose built. So it's going to be designed to give it maximum protection. We're not talking about a shipment that's going to be banged, around in a container. It will be palletized, or it will be in a lift van, or in a container, but strapped in and packed in tightly, so that it shouldn't have any unnecessary movement that could cause damage.
One last question before we go on to the next topic is, how about storage, and where is it better?
Storage is, again, it's going to depend how long you need storage. Generally, the cost in the States versus Israel is pretty similar. Depends on how long you're going to need storage. But if it's just a few days, we would leave it in the container. If it's more than 3 or 4 days, we would leave it in the port for 3 or 4 days. If it's more than 3 or 4 days, we would pull the container out of the port and put it in a secure storage area. And up to 3 weeks, we would get
Right. So the
take
only
it out of the container.
the issue with that, there's
return-
no issue, but that is gonna be super clean, meaning they trimmed everything for you, and it's gonna
All
cost
right.
you money.
If you could please put your.
Somebody's not
your,
muted. Maybe
Go on
somebody
mute.
need to be muted. I don't know. But more than 3 weeks, we would definitely want to unload the container and return the empty container, which is owned by the shipping line. And they start charging rental on the container. It's called demurrage from day 8. So they give you 7 free days from this container's arrival.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's the
We do have another question, Marcy.
about shipping from
Oh, a lift van, is it different for storage? Is that correct?
A lift van is easily stored. In fact, the U.S. Embassy, we do a ton of U.S. Embassy jobs. And the diplomats, because they never quite know, even though they get reassigned someplace, a lot of times they get pulled to Afghanistan or some kind of crazy place like that. And so their goods will go into storage. So they always and only load their containers in lift vans, and the lift vans go in the containers. That way they can, if necessary, store them without having to move the individual boxes or individual furniture around. So if you have a smaller shipment and you are going to need storage, there's another bonus as well. When you ship what's called a consolidation, which is 2 or more shippers in the same container, that's always put in a lift van. In that situation, you get 30 days of free storage at the port. If you have an exclusive container, you only get 4 days of free storage.
Okay, that looks about like all the questions we have about shipping. Moving to Israel and starting a new home here is very exciting, but things are a little different here in Israel than they are in the US. And tonight we're going to learn about some of these differences from Steve Toberman. He is the owner of Edison Homes, and he has been working in real estate for over 30 years. He's going to help us learn the ins and outs and what to expect when looking for a new home in Israel. Whether you're renting or buying, these tips still apply. And once again, if you have questions, please just add it to the chat box. Thank you. Steve?
Steve, make sure you get yourself off of mute.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you, David. And it's a real pleasure to share this evening with you, Shmuel. I guess 50 years ago, when we were about 16, 17 years old, Shmuel needed housing in Minneapolis for a Shabbat, and I was able to house him in my own parents' house back when we were 50 years ago, approximately. So it's a pleasure to be with you. What David did not mention was, Marcy, is that it was my grandfather, Victor Toberman, who started mobile home sales in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I worked in the family business for a year before making Aliyah. So you could say that I am a 3rd generation real estate agent. Another person from the past I want to bring up is Golden Mayer. When Golden Mayer used to talk with North Americans about moving to Israel, the importance and the good about making Aliyah, they would complain. They would say, but Golden Mayer, Miss Prime Minister, the rooms are so small. And she would reply, how big do you need a bedroom? You need to put a bed in it and you need to put a closet in it. Now in America, my understanding is that people spend many hours in bedrooms with computers, with large screens, and who knows what. Size. If I was going to say anything that's important, I would talk with you about size. What I want to do tonight is review concepts. We use the same words, but we have different ideas, different meanings to the same words we use. And that is what I want to concentrate my short presentation tonight on concepts of words. And I often depress people because of the high cost of apartments and the small size of apartments. So let's talk first about size. First of all, I'm going to talk in meters. Question for you. How many of you know or think how many countries still use the non-metric system of inches and pounds and feet? You can put it on the chat and David can read them off for us. How
2.
many countries use the non-metric system? Any guesses?
2.
Someone says 2, someone says just the United States, someone says 1.
3. Canada.
Bobby Weinman gets the Cupid doll. That's right. 3 countries, only 3 countries. The United States, Liberia, and Myanmar. Those are the only 3 countries that still use the non-metric system. So when we talk about sizes in this country, we talk about rooms being 3 by 3 meters, 3 by 4 meters, 3 by 5 meters. You can Google to find out, and you can make your own idea. Let's see, I need to share a screen, yes? We share screen. You disabled my sharing screen, David. Let me share a screen.
Second.
Allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. 1 second.
You disabled it.
I don't see how.
You disabled.
I don't see how. Wow, to share screen. I don't see how that's a problem there. Anybody know how this is? Let me see here.
I have my share content enabled. It's a green button, but I'm only on my phone. So if I'm enabled, then everybody else must be, no?
We're all disabled. You
No,
have to
it's just because it's green. It's not working. I just tried it. Are you the host, David?
I am the host. 1 second.
I think there's a security button down at the bottom.
I see it. I just changed it. Maybe that.
Yes.
Try it now.
Yep, it's working now. There you go.
Okay. So here you see my PowerPoint, yes?
Yes.
Okay. When we talk about meters, and you can write this down if you want, or like I said, just Google it. 3 meters equals 9.845 feet. 4 meters is 13 feet. 5 meters is 16 feet. So if we talk about a small room, 3 by 3, that would be 29.5 meters, 29.5 feet. I don't know if that's a big room or a small room compared to American standards anymore. A 3 by 4 room would be 39 feet. A 4 by 5 room would be 65.6. If somebody is building a new apartment, you might have a large bedroom meaning 5 by 3, 6 by 3, maybe 7 by 3.
Excuse me, can I interfere for a sec? So a meter is very roughly equal to yard. A square yard is 9 square feet.
I don't know anything about America.
No, but I understand that. But you're saying that 3 by 3 meters is 30 feet roughly. It's not correct. 3 by 3 is 9 times 9, 81 square. Every square meter is roughly 9 square feet.
It's actually closer to 10 square feet per square meter.
3 by 3 meters. Square meters. 3 by 3 square meters. 3 by 3
Roughly
meters,
90 square feet.
I don't know American.
Yeah.
I got a different answer.
I do, and I'm telling you, it's
Okay.
3 by 3 is
I don't
90.
want to go by American. I can only tell you about what meters are.
Well, maybe we can Google that later on.
9 square meters is 96 square feet. I just Googled it.
Thank you.
Okay. If you have square meters, you multiply by 10.76 and it gives you square feet.
So if you build a new building, you have one large room. That could be 3 by 5, 3 by 6, 3 by 7. You would have one normal room, which could be like 3 by 4 meters. And you would have one smaller room, which would be 3 by 3 meters. That would be a typical apartment. I want to qualify myself. that I'm talking about mostly apartments in Jerusalem. I'm not talking about in the suburbs. I'm not talking about Efrat. I'm not talking about Omer. I'm not talking about Ra'anana. I'm talking about the heart of Jerusalem. People in the United States often would move out to the suburbs because they could get bigger size for their money. The same in Israel. People move out to the suburbs to get bigger size for the money. For instance, if somebody pays rent of $1,000 in Jerusalem, they would pay $500 in Haifa. They would pay $250 in Nahariya. So I'm speaking mostly Jerusalem. When people build houses today, they build a security room, a protected room. That is usually the smaller room, which is 3 by 3 meters. That's what has to do with sizes. I will show some pictures of some rooms a little bit later in my presentation, and you might get a better idea of what I'm speaking about when I talk about a 3 by 3 or a 3 by 4 room apartment. Whether one is buying or renting, another concept is, how does one pay? Dollars is not the way to pay in Israel anymore. Dollars are not valued. Dollars are hard to negotiate. So much so that if you have a dollar mortgage at an Israeli bank, you're not even allowed to write your own dollar check and give it to your bank in Israel. The only way to bring dollars into this country today is through a bank transfer from your bank in America to your bank in Israel. Dollars is not a popular idea. One reason is because of the money laundering. Another reason is it lost a lot of the value. When people would used to pay me a fee of $2,500, now they pay me $2,750. It's the same amount in shekels of what used to be. If one is purchasing an apartment, one thing in relationship to what Shmuel said, it's good to sell off your big furniture in America and not ship it here. I have a tenant today who wanted to bring their electric dryer, their gas dryer to their new rental apartment. Gas dryers are not a popular idea in this country, not in Jerusalem in small apartments. When one is buying an apartment, one has to negotiate not only the price, but also a payment schedule. Well, what does it mean, payment schedule? There's no such thing as a normal payment schedule. Perhaps if you buy something for $900,000, the first payment would be $300,000. The second payment would be another $300,000. And when you get the key, you pay the last third, a third, a third, and a third. But a payment schedule could also be 25, 25, 25, 25. It could be 20 at the beginning, 80 at the end. It could be 80 at the beginning, 20 at the end. It's something that's negotiated. If you're buying something new, then there's a different setup, and you pay according to how much progress is made on the building project. If you need to get a mortgage here, it's also a different concept than America. Banks like to give out maybe 50% of the value of the apartment. 50%. I'm not saying that they won't give 60% or 70% or maybe 75%, but you have to be aware of this, that when you want to buy an apartment, you have to come up with at least a third of the money in cash yourself, cash. There's another, you have to qualify yourself. Anytime you bring money to this country, you have to show that it's kosher money. What does that mean? Banks will require you to show proof of where the money came from. For instance, have a letter from your CPA for the last 3 years stating where your monies came from for it to be transferred here. Second, banks don't like to give mortgages to people after they are 70 years old. If you are 50 years old and looking for a mortgage, perhaps they'll only give it to you for 20 years. We do have 5-year mortgages. We do have 30-year mortgages and everything in between. But there's a problem. Now, I heard of a bank that in theory would give 75% to up to 75 years old a mortgage. But the funny thing about it is when I did my homework, the insurance company would not supply life insurance to the bank on the mortgage for people over 70 years old. So do not plan to get a mortgage past your age of 70. That's very important for you to be aware. Mortgages, how much is a mortgage for? You pay back the same way that you would think of in America, 1 to 3. If you net 12,000 shekels, a third of it would be 4,000 shekels. 4,000 shekels can go to paying off your mortgage. Guarantors. Banks here do not foreclose on property. It goes to our socialistic days of starting the state. Nobody should be roofless. So you do not take somebody out of their house. Therefore, if you're no good in paying back your mortgage, the bank then turns to the guarantor. Banks today require 2 guarantors. That's what they do. In my day, it was 5 guarantors. They passed a guarantors law that says if you have 5 guarantors, everybody should only be responsible for 20%. So banks said, we don't want 20% from somebody. We want at least 50%, so they go by 2 guarantors. One client in buying a house 20 years ago was a lawyer from Chicago. And when we got to the lawyer's office to purchase a house, he says, I need a mortgage. I said, okay, who do you have for guarantors? He says, what do you mean guarantors? I'm a lawyer from Chicago. My credit's good. I don't need co-signers. That was his concept, and he never bought a property. You need guarantors to take out a mortgage here. Extra costs. Lawyers, they charge, figure 1% plus ma'am, VAT tax, the value added tax. Think of it as sales tax, value added tax, 1% of the purchase. You have an agent's fee, which is 2% plus the VAT tax. You have purchase tax. I can give you a figure now, but they changed often. So don't quote me on the figure. And it's all listed on the Nefesh B'Nefesh website. While it is a gradated progressive tax, like up to the first 1.6 million shekels, there's no tax. From 1.6 million to 2 million, it's 3.5, and on and on and on. There's a benefit for new immigrants that they are entitled to a tax break on the purchase of a residential housing unit and or business premise during a period of starting 1 year before they make Aliyah and ending 7 years after immigration. And the tax rate for new immigrants is up to the first 2,857,881 shekels, which is about $840,000, $840,000. The rate is 0.5%, a half a percent. And over $840,000, that part of the purchase would be 5%. That's it for new immigrants. Other fees. There's a Vadabite, a house committee charge. In the older days, every building had its own furnace and supplied heat to the whole building. Today, that's rare. Today, most people put in air conditioners, and the air conditioners heat and cool your apartment. It's dry heat. You need to learn how to put humidity back into the apartment when you use the heater. When you buy or when you rent, you pay a vad bite. If it's just cleaning the stairs once a week and electricity, it could be 50 shekels. If you have an elevator, you might add 150 shekels or 300 shekels, depending if it's a small building with only 6, 8 tenants or a large building with 30 tenants.
I've never
Yes. So Vattenbyte varies if you have a small or large amount of tenants in an entryway, for elevators, for gardens, and for other extras that one might have. When you rent or when you buy, it usually doesn't include appliances. You could rent an apartment completely furnished. You can rent an apartment completely empty or partially furnished. If it's partially furnished, it usually means appliances and cabinets. That's what partially furnished usually means, but you might be surprised. Often one negotiates what stays and what doesn't. Sometimes an owner on a rental property has no place to put their table, so they want to keep it in the apartment. Parking. Parking is an issue. Let me explain the difference in parking. And if you want to buy an apartment, and I take you and I show you a number of apartments and we don't succeed, then I will say, well, where can you be flexible? Some people can be flexible with the price. Some people can take out a larger mortgage and then have more money. Or they can be flexible in the size of the apartment. They could be flexible in the neighborhood of the apartment. In Jerusalem, think of circles. The inner circle of Rahavia and the German colony and Old Katamon and Baka, that would be the inner circle, the most expensive. The surrounding circle of Gilo and San Simon and the Katamonim would be the second circle, a little bit cheaper. And the farther circle would be Gilo, Maleamim, Armon Hanatziv, Givat Mesua, the further circle. Further out you go, the cheaper it is. Stairs, apartments by law that only go up 4 flights. Ground floor apartment is called ground floor. Go up 16 stairs, that's the first floor. In elevators, it's confusing for Americans. First floor is not ground floor is ground floor. First floor is up 16 stairs. 16 stairs average from floor to floor. So one can go up 64 stairs without having an elevator. Usually cheaper apartments than only going up 16 stairs. In Jerusalem, without an elevator, the first flight up is the most valued apartment. Ground floor apartments often have sewer problems from the building, or crime rate is highest on ground floor apartments. Top floor apartments, the older apartments, might have leaks from the roof. So those are concerns about top floor and ground floors. When you take a renting contract, it's going to be most likely in Hebrew. Unfortunately, contracts are usually in favor of the owner, not the tenant. Even if your Hebrew is good, if you're not familiar with Israeli law, consult someone who knows. Either a reliable agent, and they have to be reliable, or a lawyer, which I recommend, because you don't know what parts are not in the contract, such as a clause to give you the right to extend the contract for another year. An option, it's called. An option isn't mutual. It's only the right of the tenant to have the option to rent for a second year under the same conditions. When you negotiate, entry date. Owner doesn't want the apartment to be empty for another month, whether you're buying or whether you're renting. Sometimes empty apartments, if somebody can move in right away, they get a better rate. How they pay? Used to be popular to pay a year in advance to try to get a discount on the rate. Today, it's not so popular. What stays, what doesn't stay. Extra costs when you rent, Arnona. Arnona is property tax. Property tax is high. But I remember a brother of mine saying property taxes were sky high in Minneapolis. He left Minneapolis. The Vattenbyte, the House Committee, which I mentioned, you don't rent apartments with phones these days because phone is connected to the internet and everybody brings in their own package that they want, but you pay for water, electricity, gas. Let me show you about parking. If you want an apartment with parking, everybody will say, sure, I'll take everything. if you're like me, we have champagne taste and a beer allowance. Everybody would like to have a balcony. Everybody would like to have a sukkah balcony. Everybody would like to have a machsan, a storage room, and everybody would like to have private parking. This is how it works in Israel. Blue and white. You see the blue and white on the sidewalk. Blue and white says it's paid parking for 2 or 3 hours. Here it says 3. If you live in this building and you have a rental contract or a owner's contract, and you changed your Teudat Zahut, you changed your Israeli identity card to show that that's where you live, you can park in blue and white on your street for free. Not only your street, but a few streets around it. That's one way to park a car, blue and white. And you pay by the hour if you're not a resident there. Another way is by having shared parking. This is a shared parking lot where it's first come, first serve on who gets it. This parking is private. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 apartments in this building. Am I correct? 2, 4, I lied. 6 apartments in this building. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places for cars. 3, 4. So it's first come, first serve, whoever gets it, it's shared parking lot. And there are some apartments that are private. And this could be registered in the title with your apartment that this is a private parking spot for you. That's how it goes with parking. With balconies, oh, that's a normal balcony, okay? It does not look, oh, this is a balcony for a sukkah, right? There's nothing on top of it. This one is not. So here you have a sukkah balcony, here you don't have a sukkah balcony, but you have a balcony. I'll continue. This is an apartment with a sukkah balcony. It's figure 20 centimeters each balatot. It's 1 meter by 7 meters long. And this person puts up a sukkah, every sukkah on his balcony here. He owns this apartment. This one is interesting. Here you have 3 balconies, 1, 2, 3 on each floor, and they closed them. A phenomena here is if you don't have a balcony, you want to build one. And if you have a balcony, you want to close it. So you see, this is a normal closed balcony, and this is normal closed, but this one's kind of funny. You see the trees down. If you don't know what a trees is, this is a trees, a shutter that goes up and down, right, to let out the sun. So again, in this apartment, it seems to me that they ke'ilu, as if they just have the shutter down, but most likely they put the shutter down and then they put bricks inside the apartment on the other side of the shutter, and then they broke the wall going into their living room and enlarged their living room. That's common. Sometimes they do it legally, sometimes they don't do it legally. And it's called this. That's the Hebrew term for it. This. You go around to get things done. Sometimes around the law.
I just want to remind you we're 3 minutes to the hour.
Thank you kindly. Let me go on. Here's a bigger balcony. And here's another nice balcony. But sometimes you have huger balconies. In this apartment, it's 35 meters, the balcony, and it's called a terrace. It's like, what's the difference between a vase and a vase? Somebody said the price. This is a larger balcony, 35 meters. It's called a terrace. He's got a gas range, he's got running water, he's got irrigation, and a private gardener comes in. Apartments, you see one kind of stone and you see another kind of stone up above. Air above apartments or roofs of the apartments is what is of value. You look at how many building rights does one have. Building rights is very valuable on what you can build. When you see these large buildings, understand while they might have 150 meters, it's not on one floor. It's spread over 3 floors. This is the Dan complex in Jerusalem. This is one apartment. with the 3 half floors. This is another apartment on 2 to 3 levels going down. This is one apartment. This is another apartment. That's how they work. There's a wall between the two. This is an apartment just being built right now. It's called Tama 38. The new idea is that when you only are allowed to build up 4 flights, let somebody build, a builder build 2 more flights, gives everybody an extra room, like a protected room that they never had before, gives them a balcony and gives them an elevator. Cost the builder maybe 4 to 6 apartments, and if he builds 8 apartments, he gets 2 apartments for profit. That's one of the techniques that's being sold today, Tama 38. Another one is Pinui or Binui, where they knock it down and they build one up. This apartment building wasn't Tama 38, it was before those days, but they just built as a column. So the top floor here and the top floor here didn't pay for the building license, so they never got one. Let me just speed up a little bit. This is the same building that did Tama 38, where this column are all the protected rooms. These are the protected rooms. Here you see the steel door of the window. It's a protected room. Other things I want to show you are kitchens. When there are open kitchens, they're called mitzvah Amerikai, an American kitchen, wide open. We never had that in America, but that's how it was. This is a mitzvah Amerikai, sometimes one sink, sometimes it's a double sink right next to each other. Sometimes it's sinks far apart from each other, or even with an island where they put a 3rd sink in this apartment. So this one's a very fancy kitchen, fancy schmancy with 2 apartments. Small, this is a bedroom of 4 meters by 3 meters, a 12-meter bedroom. This is a large bedroom, 3 by 5 with a cabinet built in. Cabinets are 60 centimeters that they take. And this is a living room of only 4 by 3, a smaller one. And this is a larger living room, 5 by 3. Part of the living room, this part here would be the dining area leading to the kitchen. This is a lovely, this is a luxury apartment where it's 7 meters long, the living room, by 4 meters. It's a $2 million property, so be aware of that. And I'll end where they make their protected rooms with bunk beds. That's how they utilize the space, by putting bunk beds. This is the protected window with the steel belts going on. So that's my presentation, talking about concepts and what they mean here with the same words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. I think we're running a little longer than we were expecting, but first of all, I really want to thank you. I learned a thing or two, and I've been living here for 7 years. Before we go on to questions, I just want to remind everyone to join us next Sunday at the same time for another Aliyah Network lecture. And if you have any questions that don't get answered tonight, please feel free to private message Shmuel or Steve on the Aliyah Network website, www.aliyahnetwork.com. We are a social media network similar to Facebook, but all about Aliyah. You can post photos, comments, post news feeds, create a group, and lots more. We are even offering now Zoom tutorial sessions on how to use the website. And it's just all about Aliyah, a safe, kosher, clean environment to discuss Israel. Now we can go on to questions, but before we do, there were a few things that I found confusing as an American Ola coming to Israel. Is when we were looking for an apartment, we were told it was a 4-room apartment. So what does 4-room apartment, because we showed up and found out it was only 3 bedrooms.
Right, when they talk 4-room apartment, it includes the living room being the 4th room.
So whenever you hear an apartment, just know that 1 is the living room and the rest are the bedrooms. Okay, so a 5-room apartment.
If somebody says 3.5 rooms, what does it mean a half a room? A half room could mean many things. It could mean a dining area. It could mean a small bedroom. Who knows what it could mean?
Okay, these are just a few questions that I have, and then we'll go on to what I see posted. Now, as a new Ola, I found that most landlords require a cosigner or a guarantor, which you spoke about. is there any ways for somebody new in the country who may not even know anyone here to get around that?
It's a problem. When one is renting an apartment, they also need a guarantor on the apartment. I do not recommend at all that one leaves cash for a security apartment.
Yes, that's something a lot of landlords will then say.
Right. I do not recommend it because you should not have to hassle with the landlord to get your cash back. What I do on my contract, and I manage a number of apartments, I take a security check from the guarantor. I don't take a security check from the tenants because if they're no good, their check is no good.
Right.
But if I take a security check from a guarantor, then I have a recourse. When I moved here, I lived in an absorption center. So we all signed for each other back then, not knowing any better. And I say, if nobody can vouch for you, why would I want you as my tenant if nobody can vouch for you? The only way
you don't know
around,
anyone in the country.
yeah, but the only way around it is by giving cash and by giving open checks, one to the electric company, one to the water company, one to the gas company, with no amount and no date on them. I don't recommend that, but those are the ways around it.
We had a
Last question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, David.
No.
I just have one more, and this would actually, Shmuel and Steve, maybe both of you can kind of answer this together. I very often hear from people, oh, should I bring my American oven? My American oven is much bigger than the Israeli oven. First of all, for all you cooks out there, you eventually get used to the Israeli size oven. But I mean, on the shipping side and on the real estate side, is that a wise decision to bring your oven?
Well, I'll jump in, and then Steve can speak about from the housing. We brought in when we made Aliyah, this is back in 1986, I guess we did our shipment in 1987. We brought a big GE standard American oven. We're actually on our third or fourth GE oven, and we built our kitchen in our home, and it obviously suits the size of a GE oven. We're now getting a little bit tired of it because I think it's not made as well as it was back then, but we're kind of stuck. We have a hole in the shish, in the countertop for that size oven, and it's a problem because they don't sell American sized ovens here. They have larger ovens that are 5 centimeters longer, or the Israeli ovens or European ovens that are about 10 centimeters smaller. So we have a problem because we brought an American oven, but the truth, I do like having that much space, for the Thanksgiving turkey, which we don't cook, but we can still fit in if we want to. If you're building your own home, if you're building your own apartment, so certainly you can pick and choose the size furniture and the size appliances that you want, and they will fit. But there's no question that it's certainly easier to get smaller European-sized appliances.
Mm-hmm. So a standard Israeli-sized kitchen would fit a European-sized oven.
Yeah, that's a typical.
Okay, we'll go on to some of the questions here. Okay, somebody's asking, can American bedroom furniture fit in Israeli homes?
First thing I did is I traded my big desk in America with a teacher of mine who had a same desk but much smaller. We just traded desks. She was happy to have a bigger desk and I was happy to have a small desk. The biggest problem in my first apartment that I bought was trying to find nightstands that were small enough. For large beds, double beds, king size beds, it's hard to all fit in American kinds of nightstands.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't recommend especially nightstands, but also beds. Because what you're doing is you're paying, Shmuel can tell you how much it is for shipping it and how much for the insurance on shipping it. And you take that money and apply it to buying furniture here. It's probably not a bad idea.
Another thing is, if you bring twin size beds, it's not easy finding twin size sheets.
That's right.
Okay.
Not easy to find, if those who are setting lifts, I recommend doing a shower liner. It's hard to find shower liners here.
Okay, somebody here is interested in Efrat. Do you think the rooms are typically a little larger there?
The old apartments, yes.
The old apartments.
apartments, you have private houses, you have bigger apartments in the older times. Today you have a number of new sections, Olive and Zeit, and Tamar and Dekel, and the new apartments are newer apartments where you have big rooms and small rooms. They're not as big as the old ones in Efrat, but you get more for your money. Certainly much cheaper buying in Efrat. When I bought my first apartment in San Simon in Jerusalem, my friend in Chicago in my absorption center bought for the same money a place in Mali Adumim. He had a garden, he had an extra room, he had a storage room as well. But 3 years later, I could sell mine for twice as much and his went up very little. But the further out you go, the more you go. Not only for ideology do people live in the territories, rather they live in Yehuda v'Shomron also because of economic reasons.
Okay, somebody asked about cats. Do landlords typically allow pets when renting, or that depends on the landlord?
Yesh v'yesh. Some people allow animals and dogs and cats and some don't. That's in the landlord.
Okay, I'm just going over some of the questions here. Do U.S. small appliances work in Israel? Gas top and the electric oven below.
I can tell you that I have, when we made Aliyah, we brought all of our small appliances, mixer, blender, food processor, and they all worked with a transformer. We got 500-watt transformers, and that generally took care of everything. I even had a very close friend who went to Sears and bought the biggest, the best deal that they were selling, and ran their Sears, I think Kenwood or Kenway, whatever it's called, refrigerator for 20 years. A huge 2,000-watt transformer on their marble countertop. It can be done. I still have one food processor left that we use on Pesach, so it's only been 60 or 70 times I've used it in the last 35 years. But it's a 110 that we use on the transformer, and it can work. When they die, then you buy an Israeli appliance.
Right. So it might be easier just to buy Israeli appliances, but if you do have that extra space on your lift that we don't want to waste, squeeze them in there.
Yeah.
Okay. That looks like that's most of the questions here. Like I mentioned earlier, you can go to the Aliyah Network website and you can private message Shmuel or Steve. Also, if you have a question you think can benefit all the members, please post it publicly and tag Steve or Shmuel on your post. And there are other shippers and realtors on the group as well, and they can also chime in, and they probably have lots of great advice for you as well. I hope everyone was able to learn something, and thank you so much. See you next.
It's not uncommon for a real estate agent to take a broker's fee from the seller and from the buyer. It's also not uncommon for a real estate agent to take just from one party, especially with the multiple listing service. The multiple listing service, one represents the seller and the other one represents the buyer.
But you said there's only 2 of those in the country?
Multiple listing service?
Yeah. So I have friends in Ma'alot specifically that said that when they looked to buy an apartment, they wanted to buy a specific apartment and they were having trouble negotiating, and they realized that buyer agents didn't exist. They approached one of their friends who was a real estate agent, and he had never heard of the concept of a buyer's agent. I understand. I mean, Jerusalem is much more Anglo than Ma'alot.
Well, Jerusalem is different from Ma'alot for many things. I won't say Anglo. By all means, there are buyer agents here. It's easy for me to get buyer clients. What's important is that I have something on my shelf. Everybody can come to my store, but if I don't have something on my shelf to sell them, then I'm not worth too much.
But that's my question. You're selling from your shelf, not from
not necessarily.
No.
I have a program where I get my listings from every possible listing service that's possible. The newspapers, the different websites. So I have an up-to-date daily listing, and I will work for a client and modify my search according to what their needs are. So by all means, I would work just for the buyer, just for the renter.
I think we have a question here. Melissa, did you want to ask something? Or you
I
just
know there wasn't a question. I wanted to jump in over here, just because we've been talking in a couple of different places about the broker working for the buyer, the broker working for the seller, the whole amount. So basically, I'm an American broker, and there are a lot of people involved in these transactions. As you know, they're going to be lawyers, they're going to be financial people, they're going to be a lot of people. My advice is get the property that you want. Don't get hung up on which broker is working for whom. Get the property that you want, and then we'll work everything out. The point is to get you into the right property. I mean, I do not kill a perfectly good deal over commission that is not 100% what I want. I think everybody, all the brokers who want to work with Olim are going to be flexible about all these things just to get the Olim into Israel, into good houses, good apartments. So I think that's what we have to think about. Don't get hung up on those. Everything will go down on paper at the end, but that should not scare off any renters or any buyers from doing a real good transaction, finding a really good place to live in Israel, in my opinion.
Bravo.
Thank you. Do we have another question here? You got to unmute. Okay.
Okay. My question, hi, my name is Ruthie Yonker, and this is my husband, Steve. We're from Seattle. We're thinking of going back. We are actually a choser, because Toshav Chozrim, because Steve lived in Israel for a while, and we have been here for 30 years. My question, and it's a big one because that throws me off all the time, is we want to buy a house eventually in Israel, but we can't do it from here because I don't know anything. So we're planning on like renting for a year. What do I do with all my stuff for a year? And we don't know exactly where we want around Yerushalayim, but further, like, Male Domim or HaChoma or something around that. So I'm kind of stuck. I don't know, do I pack? Do I keep it here? Do I send it there? Can you give me a little bit of clarity or a little bit to open in my, okay, thank you.
I think that's something that I can answer. Okay. If you're sending a partial container shipment with the lift van that we talked about before, so that's going to take a good, usually 30 days or more until it gets from packing till it goes on the water. From the West Coast, like y'all are, it'll take another 5 or so, 6 weeks on the water until it gets to Israel. And in Israel, you get another 30 days of free storage. So without much effort, you will get about 3.5 months of free storage or storage in transit. From that point, there are options. There are self-storage places here, not very many, not like in America. A company like ours or most shippers have a storage facility, a warehouse that they can store your items. The advantage of storing in Israel, and again, I'll raise a red flag, fair disclosure, I want you to store by me. But that being said, as I mentioned earlier, the costs are generally the same as storing in America, unless you have the option, if you haven't sold your home, maybe you can put everything in the basement and everything then gets stored for free. That's obviously something that I can't offer you here in Israel, unless you have a very large apartment here that you can store in one room or something like that.
I just want to add,
storing in Israel is that you will then be able to, when you're ready, when you get your final apartment, within very short notice, a few days, the company can turn around and deliver your goods to you. So that's the advantage of storing in Israel, beyond the fact that I'll make another few nickels on the deal. But if you store in America, obviously, then you're looking at 3 months from giving the go until you get your goods.
Okay.
I think it's smart on your part, the Yonkers, to first rent and check out an area before you buy. If you're
That's
not
what I
familiar with
was
the
thinking.
city, I think that's a very wise idea. If you're a young couple, you want to check out the schools. If you're religious, you want to check out the synagogues. If you're not good with languages, you want to check out the language of the neighbors. So I think it makes a lot of sense for newcomers who aren't familiar to rent their first year before they buy.
So you could find apartments that will have appliances, because if it's all in the shipping, if we come for rent, it has to be with the appliances. and
Some
everything.
apartments have appliances and some don't, by all means.
Okay.
And you can buy appliances here if you need.
I thought of something. I noticed, and this might be only apartments that are listed for rent by owner, and that might be the benefit of using an agent. Now, I've noticed that when an apartment is listed for rent, it's like listed available November 1st. October 28th, it's available November. How does one get that apartment, move out of their apartment? Is that only, listed by owners that way, or is it through agents as well? Like, I find that there's no time to make that whole transition from one apartment to the next.
Excellent question. It's funny because Americans like to know 2-3 months in advance where they're going to move. In Israel, it could be 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months. What I say to my clients is it's good to plant the seed in my head to look for you 3 months down the line. It's still soon, but you never know what comes up. And sometimes I hear of apartments that will be available.
At some point, you mentioned.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say 1 month is usually about the time frame here. That's how much in advance that you start looking.
Can you compare it to a wedding? A wedding here, you get an invitation 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the wedding, and not during Corona. In America, you get a year in advance. You get a notice, save the date. Nobody plans a wedding here a year in advance. Doesn't happen.
I think, guys, Melissa Gursky has been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I am not swift at this stuff. But no, my back over here about selling the house in Seattle and when to move the household, I would say, based on what I'm telling people, you move the stuff when your house sells. Don't leave your household here in storage over here. I'm telling my clients not to leave any unfinished business in the States, regardless of what you're moving to in Israel. But you want to make sure that, like everybody's saying, you have your furniture and everything on the way so you know where it is. And then also, so you're not paying a storage locker or something in the United States with the things that could go wrong there. There are a lot of places for human error in the States, especially now. I think it's better to take everything with you when you go. That's my opinion.
At some point, you mentioned that some apartments will be rented without appliances and cabinets. What do you mean by cabinets?
Usually you have kitchen cabinets that are included. It's rare not to have some kitchen cabinets, but usually bedroom cabinets. Sometimes just the main bedroom has cabinets in the bedroom and the other rooms don't.
Okay. Okay, we call it closets here. That's why I wasn't sure.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you another question. Let's say someone can afford $5,000-$6,000 rental per month in Haifa. Does that mean that the apartment will still be with small bedrooms and in
that's a very nice budget for rental in Haifa.
So my question is, should I be preparing my children that they, instead of living in a house as we do mostly, right? In America, we'll be living in a small, tiny, poorly conditioned apartment. With
Haifa, 5,000 is a very high budget to be playing with for apartments in Haifa. You can get good size in Haifa for $5,000 a month.
Okay. Okay.
I do want to say that you know, you can always do bunk beds, even in a small room. There's a way to have compact furniture. And not all apartments have tiny bedrooms. Some, you know, we live in Mali Adumim, and our bedrooms, we're in an older home, but our bedrooms are kind of spacious. So, you know, maybe it's best if you even take a place before you make Aliyah to get the measurements of the room and see what to pack, what will fit.
All right, we have a question coming in. I believe this is going to be directed towards Shmuel from Naomi. Naomi?
Hi. So I'm making Aliyah like sometime after Hanukkah, and I had an apartment briefly, but then because of Corona, I moved back in with my parents. I don't really have furniture. So it's really just about moving like some kitchen stuff and my books, which takes up the bulk of my weight. My question is, without like, I realized that even a small lift is like $1,000, and apparently sharing a lift is illegal. So do you have like any suggestions, especially because I'm going to be in a dorm the first 6 months I'm in Israel, and I'm going to be moving again with my quarantine and everything. So I want to know like what makes the most sense in terms of moving my stuff.
There's really only the New York area because there's so much business there.
Oh, I'm from LA.
You're from LA? So it's not really available. Out of New York, we can ship small shipments of up to 100 cubic feet, one pallet. And we have a price of $950, but that's warehouse to warehouse, where you drop it off at the warehouse. It gets to Israel, we clear it through customs, and then you can pick it up from the warehouse in Ashdod. From LA, I guess we could do a similar kind of service. You're probably looking at about $1,200. I mean, it's going to be relatively expensive for such a small shipment. There's no good way to ship small shipments from overseas via the sea. And part of that is because there's so many parties that are involved with the shipment, and each one tries the minimum fee. And just as an example, the bonded warehouse, which is required by customs to unload the container, they charge for 1 ton minimum. If you've got 10 boxes, it's going to weigh 250 pounds. You have to pay for a whole ton. Yeah. So you can just understand from that's what makes it so expensive, even with small shipments. And I would even recommend, if for something what it sounds like you're talking about, pay the overweight, take it with you on the plane. There's no point in doing the shipment.
So based on what I read on the Nefesh B'Nefesh site, I'm only allowed 2 suitcases up to 50 pounds each. And everyone's been saying that airlines have been super strict regarding weight limits.
Maybe I'm not, I haven't flown in a long time. I'm not sure anymore. But again, I would check with the airline what they're going to charge you for the overweight. And if you have to pay $100, $150 a bag, it'll still be much cheaper to max them out and take with you on the plane another 2 suitcases.
You can pay $200 for each extra suitcase.
Okay.
Oh wow.
It depends on the airline. But
no, for Aliyah to United, and that's their policy. It's $200 for every 50-pound suitcase.
That's great to know.
It's how much for every what?
$200 for every 50-pound suitcase.
It will cost cheaper if you send it by regular USPS.
Not really. I think 20 kilo rather, which is 44 pounds, is the maximum that you can ship via the post office. And I believe, but this is not an area that I know much about. I think you're looking at also $200, $250 for a package that weight.
Yeah, I wonder if it's worth it to just buy an extra suitcase on the plane, because I'm not bringing furniture. I'm not bringing, anything. I mean, it's basically clothing and books.
Yeah.
Also check out like DHL or UPS, FedEx, other places to ship here.
There's also a separate.
Someone chatted something like illegal is a relative term here. What does that mean? Is very relative? What does that mean?
Illegal is illegal. And I can tell you, as licensed customs brokers, I would never recommend something that's illegal. I wouldn't want to threaten our license. That being said, I cannot know, and I cannot be part of a shidduch to match you up with you or anybody else with somebody who's doing a shipment. Do people get together and do they ship things together? Sure, all the time. And what we don't know, we don't know. And so if you would find somebody going from LA who's got room in their container and you work out something, you pay them for the space you use. So, you know, we don't know. Now I have, you know, I don't have many jokes, but the audience keeps changing. So I always point out that if you give somebody else guns and drugs, and those are the B's, you won't be going to jail. The person whose the shipment is in their name, they'll be going to jail. So
That's rather dark.
But you probably won't ship guns or drugs, so it's okay. But again, the things that do happen more often, and even that's from America, not so often. But let's say that you sent a microwave, and they already had a microwave but didn't know about yours, so they would not report it. And then customs, if they would do an inspection and discover the second unreported microwave, then there would be, you know, they'd have to pay a fine and they'd have to pay the taxes, which I'm sure they would put back on you. But I mean, I'm not going to get involved with that because, again, that's not something that I would know about because I don't know that you've hitched a ride.
But also a totally Jewish answer is you give them the boxes of your books, you pick up a handkerchief, now you make a kinyan, now they own your books, they ship it on their lift, completely illegal, you come back, you make another kinyan, you acquire your own
It's
books.
like before it's like Pesach.
Exactly. No, this is like they're worried about stuff like, you know, people shipping in large amounts of electronics to sell over here and stuff. They don't care about these books.
The only electronics I have are my own. I barely know how they work.
Also ask your Nefesh B'Nefesh advisor because you get a clothing shipment that's separate from the others. So find out about your clothing shipment.
What? There's no clothing shipment. What are you talking about?
Yeah, there is a clothing shipment. That they just talked about it on a webinar last week.
What exactly is a clothing shipment?
As far as I know, there's only 3 shipments over a 3-year period, whatever you want to send.
3+ clothing. That's what they said last week.
There's 3 plus a car. This is our business, and I know the rules as far as customs go
But
pretty
the
well.
shipment has to be paid for, right?
Hello. Answer her question, and I would want again.
Let's see if we can find that.
Go ahead, Shoshana.
Okay. I have a motorized wheelchair and a shower bench. I plan on renting a furnished apartment when I first get there. Therefore, I want to hold off on receiving the main part of my lift until later when we get our permanent apartment. At first, I want to have my power chair with me and my shower bench. Do you recommend that I ship those things in a small lift or take it on the plane with me? And also, do you know anyone from America that took their power chair that's a 110 volt to Israel and how their power chair and battery charger are doing on transformers or converters?
I can tell you it. First of all, one powered wheelchair would be exempt from taxes and can easily be imported. And I've had a number of those imported by clients. I would recommend, of course, that you take it with you on the plane, because if you ship it, it's going to take a long time to get here and you'll be without your wheelchair. Keep in mind, and I had one terrible experience with somebody who took one on the plane and then had like a scooter that they put in their shipment. It turns out that a scooter is not exempt, and they had to pay VAT on the value of the scooter, but the power wheelchair was exempt. So it got stuck in customs. It's a whole big story, and I won't go into it here. But I would definitely recommend the things that you need access to straight away. Certainly your powered wheelchair, you should bring with you on the plane. In terms of charging it, I'm certainly not an electrician. I'm barely a mover. But if you have a transformer, I would expect you can plug that in, and it will convert the electricity to from the Israeli 220 to your 110 battery.
Okay.
I also want to point out that, you know, the Yad Sarah is very big here, and Yad Sarah lends out different sort of, you know, accessibility equipment. You may want to be in touch with them. They may just get you a charger. They may be able to help you get a scooter or whatever else you might need.
No, that's a good point, and you're absolutely right. Yad Sarah is a magnificent institution that that lends out all kinds of equipment that you need.
Well, what I might do is I'll bring my power chair on the plane and ask Yad Sarah for a manual wheelchair
Yeah.
that I'll need as well. Okay.
Yeah, and I can tell you also, I was hit by a car about 2 years ago while I was riding my bicycle, and Yad Sarah supplied me, of course, with wheelchairs, but also with all kinds of bathroom.
Power chairs, because my son is in a power chair. We're not making Aliyah yet, but you were saying that you're only allowed to take one power chair, and the other one you're saying would have to get vetted. I mean, you'd have to pay tax on it, because sometimes if something goes wrong with one chair, we have to have an extra power chair just in case. Like he has a problem. That's what we have a backup chair. You're saying you can't take two chairs?
First of all,
two power chairs. I mean, and he also has a manual.
Right. I mean, you would have to check, but usually what you bring on the plane, nobody knows and nobody bothers, and you just ride right in past customs. What's in the container is what would be reviewed and potentially taxed. So again, I don't want to be responsible for if they would stop you or not when you come through the red or the green lane when you come out of the airport. But if you do get through without being stopped, then you've got one in, and then you can bring the second one in as your tax exempt. But I would say that you were safest by expecting to have to pay taxes on the VAT on the value of the second one. And by the way, because it's used, and I say this only half in jest, keep in mind that you have to pay taxes on the current depreciated value of the item. That means if you would go and sell it in a flea market, that's the value of the piece. And, you know, it's an old piece of junk for customs purposes. And chas v'chelek, I don't mean to, to insult or hurt anybody's feelings. But when you declare the value is, it's not what you bought it for, and it's not what you would insure it for. It's what you would sell it for in a flea market or in a yard sale or a garden sale.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
May I ask a quick question?
Please do, Ariel. Please do.
So Steven, this is for you. I just wanted to be clear. Are you a property manager in Israel? Do you manage properties, or you're a real estate agent yourself? And I guess depending on, it doesn't matter which question. The answer to the question as a follow-up question to that would be which locations do you serve in Israel?
I've been doing this for 32 years, and back then we called ourselves full-service agents. Today, you have mortgage brokers that just work to get you a mortgage from a bank. I used to do this on a regular basis for all my clients because I'm an old-timer, and I still do that. I sell properties, I rent properties, and I manage properties for people mostly who don't live here, but also people who live in Israel who need help managing their properties. Mostly in Jerusalem. I do manage a property in Beersheba. I do manage a property in Tel Aviv by fluke. I have sold in Netanya and in Ashdod and in Kiryat Tivon and in Beersheba, but my work is primarily today just in Jerusalem.
All right, so you manage properties, okay.
I also manage properties for a lot of people who don't live here or are older and want the assistance because they don't want to do it themselves anymore. By all means.
Okay.
Anybody else have any specific questions at this time, or?
Yeah, question about shipping again. I heard mentioned on another webinar that outdoor furniture is not permitted. Can you say more about that?
Not true. Absolutely 100% permitted. I don't know who said that, but about 5-6 years ago, they started allowing outside furniture. But that does bring up a critical point. The state of Israel said, we want to help you build your house in Israel, your home in Israel. So in principle, everything that goes inside the home, including the yard, which is where garden furniture comes in, is exempt. Things that are outside the home, for example, a trampoline, surfboard, snowboard, these things are not exempt. So, if you can just remember inside the home versus outside the home, that's pretty much the defining line between exempt or not exempt. But garden furniture 100% is exempt from all taxes. We didn't talk about a barbecue grill. Barbecue grills, this is a goofy law that started about 3 or 4 years ago, that they must have an import permit. We charge about $200 for that import permit. For the most of that, a small part of that goes to pay the Machon HaTkanim Standards Institute for the permit that they issue. Most of it goes to us to cover our running after them to get them to pass the permit from desk to desk to get signature after signature so that we can clear the shipment. We can't clear the container until that import permit is issued. So tons of Israelis bring in Weber, Genesis barbecue grills, which I have no idea what that really is, but it must be a tremendously good deal because all of them pay $200 to get that import permit.
And how about a fire pit?
A fire pit is also gas powered for cooking. Am I right?
No, it's just like a metal grate that you can make a campfire in, basically.
Oh, just a heat. Listen, that should not require. It's a goofy law that they say nobody really knows was designed to protect the importer of Weber grills.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask about the Weber grill? Because I have a Weber grill, but we got it from a neighbor that was throwing it out, so we got it for free. But I guess we'd have to still pay $200 on it. If we were
No, actually, I didn't mention, but I'm glad you brought that up. It must be new, and you do have to submit a recent invoice along with the other paperwork.
And if we literally got it from a neighbor's garbage can, do we have to pay for that, bringing that in, propane tank?
You can't. You cannot import.
You can bring it in. It can only be a new one. I got it.
Only new.
Okay.
Only new.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Can I? Yeah, I wanted to know if you don't bring a lot of furniture or you don't bring different things because of either it doesn't fit or the issue with paying it for shipping or whatever. How easy is it to get stuff? I mean, we know how to get it here in America. We know the box stores and this store to get, but how easy is it in Israel to get these things that you need? I mean, obviously people get them, but is this something we can have help with to know where to buy these items in Israel?
Well, I could maybe jump in on that, just a drop. They just opened up an IKEA in where was that, Beit Shemesh recently. And we have other IKEAs that are available within the country. So there's always that. Within Jerusalem, Talpiot, right, Marcy? Help me out here.
In Talpiot, there are a lot in Jerusalem. I mean, if that's the area you'll be in, there are a lot of great high quality furniture stores. Also, most areas have a mall. We live in Ma'ale Adumim. We have a mall, and we have an appliance store. You can go in. When we moved here, actually, we went to the appliance store and David said, I want it all today. I'll even take the floor samples. Just please deliver today. So we got a refrigerator and washing machine all on the same day. Every mall, which is funny, first of all, they have supermarkets in there. Just so you know, usually the bottom level of the mall has a supermarket, but and in the supermarket, you can even buy appliances. Even on the online sites of the supermarkets, you can buy appliances. You can buy anything in a supermarket, but all malls will have an appliance store, and they're really easy. And if we learned anything tonight from Steve Toberman, is everything is negotiable. So you negotiate to please get your stuff quickly.
What about bed?
I want to add one comment about gas. One apartment that I manage has a big Weber gas range on their terraza. You saw it in the picture. The owner says the gas is different in this country than what it was designed for. So he has to adjust all his cooking for different temperature, different timing, because it's a different kind of gas. It's not propane gas like people are used to in the States. We do get gas balloons for him. He's serviced, but it's not the same kind that he's used to.
What I can tell you from my experience, and this is we brought in a gas grill a million years ago. In my gas grill, you could just turn the diesel, I don't know how you say it, the little spritzer where the gas comes out, and it would adjust from natural gas to propane gas. But it's easy enough to get a converter, and there's gas stores here, and just go there and they'll be able to convert it for you.
I just want to say something while we're on the topic of gas, and since we were discussing homes and what are the differences here in Israel versus in the United States. Some homes here, similar to the United States, have a gas line hooked up to the house where you get your monthly gas bill. And some homes, you need to order your gas canister, and that's something you need to get used to. You'll usually have 2 canisters. When the first one is empty, that's when you order your replacement, so you don't get stuck like I have a couple of times with 2 empty gas tanks. It's just something also, good to ask your landlord, or when you're buying a house, ask, does this have a gas line, or are you using gas tanks?
We have a question. We have a question from Eric Carr. Eric?
Yeah, hi. My wife and I are sitting here, and thanks for doing this. And, we're fortunate, we have a house and we're going to rent it, I think. And we have a large garage, and since our kids are 19 and 20, it's really, we're in a tricky situation about moving. We don't want to move from our kids. So we were thinking, I just wanted to get some feedback we were thinking about getting rid of the stuff we don't need, et cetera, storing everything in our garage, and, coming with like 6 suits or something, and then, renting our place. And then, if everything seems good, hey, we're just going to check it out. Then, and the kids are starting to kind of come our way, without like that then, we'd have to deal with the whole issue with a lift, and, one of us would fly back and have to deal with that. I just wanted to get some feedback about that.
Well, I have actually somebody right now in Boston. We did that. We packed them up, I'd say about a month ago, 2 months ago maybe, and they moved to Israel 6 months, and we have a tentative move out date in March. So we packed up everything, loaded it into the garage, as you suggested, and then they rented out their home while they're gone. And they're planning to come back in March. I guess if it doesn't work out, then we won't load their goods into a container. But it's definitely doable. I've had other people who have packed things up themselves, put it in the basement, and then we come back when they.
Okay, so where they go? To Washington?
Pardon me?
So what I'm hearing you say, let me just double check this. So what I'm hearing you say that maybe when we pack the stuff in the garage, we should pack it as such that it would be really easy to then just move it right into a into a lift, so that we're not sitting there or wherever we're going to move, because we probably wouldn't move back here even if we came back to the States.
We're just concerned that, and I'm Holly. Thanks for doing this program. Hi, David. Hi, Marcy, and everybody. So we're just concerned that we want to be realistic, and we're concerned that the things that we want to bring, and it would mostly I don't even think it would be much furniture or much, but then we get there, and I think we want to acknowledge if it, God forbid, it doesn't work out after a year or two, and we're struggling. We just want to have a plan B, and not have to bring everything back. And we just, maybe it's more prudent to just go bring the things you really want around you, your dishes, your thing, you know.
Yeah, but not that it wouldn't work out so much as that basically our kids would be like, no, you know, we're never going, or whatever it is, or it didn't work out for them, and obviously we want to be around our kids.
Well, right, that's there's just considerations in a nutshell. There's just consideration. We are hesitant to bring everything, but then is it more affordable? Do you get perks from Nefesh or the government to get a lift to bring things too? I want to capitalize on the Aliyah benefit too.
Well, you know, you're entitled to bring up to 3 shipments over a 3-year period. So
Okay.
that means that you can ship a small lift to begin with, maybe things just, you know, clothing or dishes or knives or, you know, whatever that you want to have immediately available. Immediately is the wrong word. You want to have available to use during your trial period. But as long as you decide within the 3 years that you've got to go or a no-go, you can still send then the big shipment. I can tell you that's what we did again when we made Aliyah in the 80s. So we sent a small shipment. We had 2 little kids, and we were expecting a third. So we brought, I don't know, I think about 700 cubic feet, which is not so small. But then after we bought a home, we then did a big shipment. My wife went back, bought all kinds of furniture, and we did the big shipment. So in your case, you wouldn't have to go to buy everything at Fortunoff's. You could just go to the basement, to the garage, and ship all that over as you would need for their home that you would be moving into or already living.
Your wife, right? So your wife went back and gathered a few more items, and then did it, and it made a lift. What's the minimum? Like, what's the cost? I know you're allowed 3 lifts over a period of 3 years. What's the cost of, I mean, I'm sure you can have different sizes. So what's the most affordable when finances are a huge, consideration?
Where do you live?
I'm in Denver.
Oh, nice. I always used to love to go to Pueblo and to Red Rocks and everything. Denver's in the middle of no place. A long schlep.
Yes.
So it's a long schlep to the coast, to the port. So it's very expensive. I would say in a 20-foot container, oh gosh, you're probably looking at upwards of between $8,000 and $9,000, not including insurance.
Wait, how much?
I'd say between $8,000 and $9,000.
8 or 9,000?
Yeah, for a 20-foot container. But again, it's worth the paper that it's not written on. You certainly will need to get a survey first, and then a proper written quote that would take everything into account. But you know, if somebody's on the East Coast, you know, in the New York area, that same container would be about $6,000. So,
Treaster sold everything.
You know,
lift. That's how much our friends moved there a couple years ago. I know finances were a huge issue for them, you know, consideration for them as well. And they took a lift, and had half of it was still empty after they put all their stuff in. I don't know. Maybe they did it cheaper or somewhat. I didn't realize it was that expensive, 8,000 or 9,000. So
well, it's difficult for me to read, you know, and I'm sure we don't know all the facts about the other shipment. It might be only 7,000, you know, I mean, it's not
yeah.
Denver's not a place that I do a lot of shipments from, unfortunately.
Right.
But, you know, New York, I know because we do every, you know, a couple times a week. LA, but Denver, again, is very far from the port, and overland transport, if it's by rail or if it's by truck, is very expensive, even more expensive than the ocean freight.
So it's just good to get some therapy to learn how to let go of all that.
Yeah, no, for sure. for sure.
I'm starting to think that maybe we have a question about heating homes here in Israel. It's true that a lot of the homes here are just not insulated the way they are in America, or it's something to get used to. But they do have space heaters that you can buy at the yeah, Marcy.
I want to say they do have space heaters, and some homes have central heating and air conditioning. Israel is no longer a third world country. They have moved up a bit. Steve, maybe you can add a little bit to that.
Well, today it's popular to have air conditioning used as heaters. In new apartments, it is also popular to have under the floor tile heating. It's electrical heat, but it's in the newer apartments. It's usually, or the more expensive apartments. One apartment I manage has both air conditioning vents throughout the whole apartment, so central heating for that apartment, and underground floor heating. They only use it though for the bathroom and for the living room, the underground floor heating. I also want to say that what's new and what's a standard in new apartments is non-slip tiles in bathrooms and bedrooms. That's a new standard, and I'm very happy about it. For older people who have old apartments and they want to do some renovations, that's definitely one of the areas I would recommend.
I noticed one thing that we did not cover, and I know we're going an hour longer, which as long as people want to stay, I suppose that's okay. But we didn't cover the topic of water heating in homes.
Oh, the dudes, yes.
Which was very surprising to me when we first got here. With the dude Shemesh and things
Boilers.
like that. Yeah, whatever. It's another thing to know about.
Look, some apartments have solar heating for hot water. Some people have gas heating for radiators and hot water. Depends on what was there at one time and what makes sense today. The truth is, some years gas is cheaper and some years electricity is cheaper. It's also an issue. You can't talk general. You need to talk specific on the apartment and what seems to be most viable, reliable, and efficient.
Isn't solar heating though required in apartments, Steve?
You might be surprised. It's a zoning issue. Every municipality is different. Some of them have issues about the way things look or how they can place them. It's a municipality.
But it's not a required. It's not required.
It's rare that today you would build an apartment without a dude shemesh. On the other hand, in fancy schmancy Talbia, an architect built one with a gas system where the gas furnace goes on every time you open up the hot water tap, and didn't use a dude shemesh. Don't ask me the logic behind it, but right.
I just wanted to add one thing before we wrap up, because it's really getting late. I think it was Holly. She was asking about how much it was to ship from Denver, and she didn't realize how expensive it could be. I've noticed, we did it ourselves, and a lot of people, Americans bring too much stuff. We don't realize how much stuff we actually have until you show up and you realize, wait, they're still unloading more boxes. I really think you should really go, really go through your things. What's sentimental? What do you really want to have with you? And you'd be surprised, you probably don't need that much. You can get new furniture here. You don't know what your home's gonna look like. You can find things that will, suit your apartment or house or here in Israel. And it might be smaller. You may not have any storage space. Most homes don't come with built-in closets, so you might not have anywhere to store all your American things. Americans have a lot of stuff. We have like 7 different coats for every type of winter weather. In Israel, you'll need a raincoat and a winter jacket. You don't need so much.
No, thanks for saying that, Marcy. I guess I'm just thinking about, like, there's some, my mom recently, passed away, unfortunately. So I'm just thinking, like, just to take her artwork, if I had to think about anything more than, and I'm not to get it so personal on this big Zoom call. I know I'm not alone in that. Like, how do you grapple with this idea of the expense? Then I'm thinking, well, my daughter's in New York. I'll just bring it on a plane or something, or ship it to her. like I shipped it from Chicago where my mom was, and I shipped it to Denver, and it was pretty affordable, the artwork. So I'll just do that. That's, I'm starting already my mind's thinking about next steps, because, I don't really, I agree with you. If I even had to give up, I still have my wedding dishes, some things are really sentimental, things we really love, right? Especially women, not to stereotype, but there's certain things that are like our parents have given us over the years that we want to hold on to, especially if they've passed and they become really sentimental. So I don't know. And I could put that on the network. Like maybe I'll reach out on the network and ask people what they're doing, how they're handling that, or what they have done. So yeah.
Definitely,
thank you.
Definitely a great idea.
Bringing those issues up. I never even thought about it.
We say less is more. It's good to let go. You're starting a new life, and it's good to have new things in your life and not hold on and replace a life which you had in one place when you start a new life in another place. It's good to
absolutely. Thank you.
Someone's saying that she's Ella's saying that she's from Toronto, where it gets until -20. But I was colder in Israel in the winter outside. It's a weird phenomenon, but I totally can get that. It's
actually warmer outside in Israel than it is inside the house here in Israel.
The houses are like caves, so if it's cold outside, it's colder inside. So that's something to think about. I would love to say that we could keep on going for probably another half an hour, but just to everybody here, we wanted to say thank you to our guest speaker, Steven Shmuel. You guys are amazing. Let's give him a great job, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
To everybody else here who's joined from wherever you're coming from, really thank you so much for making it. As my wife said, as Marcy mentioned, please take time to go to visit the website. And this is where this magic's supposed to be happening, where we could take a lot of this information and make it searchable for everybody to be able to benefit from that. And I really wanted to again say thank you to everybody. And let's just call it a night of this, guys, right? If you have more questions, you can post it on the website or on the Facebook group or on WhatsApp. We're always here.
Amazing work. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. This particular meeting really cleared up a lot of questions and a lot of misconceptions that I had. So thank you.
Fantastic. That's so great to hear. That's fantastic. All right, everybody. Until next time, keep this date open next Sunday, same time, same place. And everybody, take care.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.